St. Louis Jane Doe, August 2017. Identified as Marisha Tobias. The 29-year-old woman had gone missing from St. Louis, Missouri on August 17, 2017. She was last seen by a friend at the intersection of St. Louis Avenue and Newstead within the city of St. Louis. It would be her sister, who didn't live in Missouri at all but rather in Texas, who reported her missing. She found herself waiting until September of 2022 to discover whatever happened to the sister she loved so much. It turns out that in the morning of October 10, 2017, Merecia was found not even 2 months after she went missing. It turns out that the police were called to a vacant home in the Kingsway West neighborhood of St. Louis, Missouri. Despite the fact that her sister did everything right and reported her missing, the police had no idea it was her. When I first read the specifics, I'll admit I was a little upset. However, I ran into something I hadn't seen in the 100 or so cases I've covered so far on this channel. The medical examiner said they could not determine sex, age, or race, but they ruled her death a homicide. More than once they'll get the age or the race or some other specifics wrong, but I've never seen them not even hazard a guess. It was not until September of 2022 that her identity was determined through DNA and genetic genealogy, with a thank you to the DNA Doe Project. Marisha Tobias went unidentified for 5 years. If she had lived, she would be 34 today. The Sacramento Jane Doe, identified as Shannon Bilth. On March 29, 2008, a man was fishing on Tyler Island Road near Ileton in Sacramento. He eventually found himself on a narrow path that led to a levee. He was wandering and eventually discovered an abandoned box spring that had been tossed into the water. It was damaged by the elements, and underneath he was able to see what appeared to be the remains of a woman, being held there within the water. He dialed 911, and the responding police would confirm there was in fact a woman underneath the box spring. They believed she'd been there for quite a while, as there was a lot of vegetation on the box spring itself. The scientists working on the case would eventually decide that her life was taken in 2004. They found a wallet, but the identification had been removed, or maybe it was never there. She was likely between 25 and 35, and she had been fully clothed. She was wearing a River Delta Fire District sweatshirt and a Grateful Dead fleece jacket, as well as having in her possession a Raiders blanket. She also had various pieces of jewelry, including a barbell piercing. It doesn't state where, but based on the size, it was perhaps in her eyebrow. They were able to obtain DNA, but they couldn't find it in the system. There was no match. They were able to confirm using public genealogy databases. In October of 2022, the remains were identified as belonging to Shannon. And although she was found in the same city she had gone missing in, there was no way to know. Shannon was struggling and had been living a transient lifestyle for a while. It's reported that it was at least 6 months. And as I've mentioned on this channel before, it's hard to go missing when you're in the habit of already being missing. It often leads to families not reporting them. She had somewhat been staying in contact with her family as she traveled, and within 6 months she had lived in Missouri, Oklahoma, Kentucky, Colorado, Nevada, and California. She had used the names Judkins, Hutchings, and Joyce. Unfortunately, that's all they've released so far. The only photo of her was a booking photo that I've changed the background on, out of respect. If the person who took her life left DNA, it's not been mentioned. Hopefully that person will pay. If you have any information on this case, please call the number provided. Shannon was missing for 18 years, almost to the day, and went unidentified for 14 years. Had Shannon lived, she'd be 53 today. The Artesia Jane Doe, identified as Cadence Langley. On October 26, 2020, quail hunters located the remains of a young woman found in a livestock watering box. Whoever put her there didn't just roll her in a tarp, but they had to remove the lid, submerge her, and place the lid back on the box. So it wasn't an accident. And in fact, someone had fired 2 rounds into the back of her skull. They estimated her age to be 14 to 22, and they said she hadn't been there very long. In the meantime, 38-year-old Amber Langley was happily collecting government assistance for her autistic daughter, Cadence. The Safford, Arizona mother profited by $4,700, betraying a daughter whose back she should have had. This is just one of the saddest cases I've covered, at least to me, and in the interest of full disclosure, one of my own kids has autism. I realize it's a struggle and it's difficult, but this just means that they need their mother even more, and it really bothers me there's not one picture of her in life and what that might mean for how she was treated. Thankfully, they were able to use DNA to find the mother, and she's now been charged. She was subject to a $500,000 bond due to the fraud and theft charges. This is still in motion, but as of this recording, it appears she was only charged with theft. And while I begin to finalize this video, and if something new happens, it will appear on the screen now in the form of an editor's note. I am also being very careful how I'm referring to her age so that YouTube doesn't turn off the comments and tank my video. I'm so sorry about how cagey I have to be about this. They do this for a valid reason in some cases, but it doesn't apply to the videos I make. But it's automated and the comments are turned off anyway. Cadence went unidentified for 18 months. She should have been loved and protected, but she wasn't. Anyone with information is asked to call the sheriff's office at 928-428-3141 or text 79516 with a tip. Cadence went unidentified for 18 months. The Houston John Doe, identified as John Howard Glazel. In Houston, Texas, in the summer of 1982, the partially skeletonized remains of a young man were found in a field in the 4200 block of Shermer Road. He was wearing gray corduroy jeans, a tan red and brown plaid shirt, and tan cowboy boots. All they really knew was that he was white and likely in his 20s, and he had been asphyxiated. They noted there was an injury to his neck, but who he was and who did this to him was a mystery. They found no other clues at the scene, and the description didn't lead to any hits on NamUs. Later on they tried, but they were unable to get any usable DNA. Then, in August of 2021, the Houston PD decided to collaborate with the Harris County Institute of Forensic Sciences, along with the Texas Rangers. The samples that they had of his DNA was seriously degraded, and it would take Othram Labs' special technology to eventually create a comprehensive DNA profile. This is yet another case funded by philanthropist and genealogist Carla Davis. The search itself was actually done by Carla in order to find his identity. It would take a full year of research, but August of 2022, the identification came out. The Houston John Doe discovered in 1982 was, in fact, John Howard Glazel. It turns out that John wasn't even in his 20s yet, as they had guessed. John was just 17, barely more than a kid. It appears they were unsure what happened to him at home, and for whatever reason he wasn't even reported missing. John Howard Glazel was just 17 in 1982. Had he lived the life he should have had a chance to live, he would be 58 today. The Jackson John Doe, 2018, identified as Arthur Winters. In 2018, a rooming house was located at 1539 West Capitol Street in Jackson, Mississippi. It suddenly went up in flames. Emergency personnel arrived and extinguished the flames, but inside of the burned wreckage was a man. His cause of death was likely from smoke and soot inhalation. But they have continued to investigate, and no one knows exactly why he was there or what his name was. Thanks to DNA identification done by Othram Labs in August of 2022, we now know that Arthur Winters was the man found inside. It turns out that Arthur had suddenly disappeared from Jackson, Mississippi in June of 2017. There is a mystery as to why he went 8 months without contacting his family, and his family was unable to say why the 59-year-old man was living in the rooming house at all. Part of the puzzle is why he didn't escape, so there might be more to the story. I wish I could offer more information. I hope that the knowledge helps his family begin to heal. It is clear his family reported him missing. Arthur Winters went unidentified for 4 years. As always, thank you so much for watching. Please consider subscribing and hitting the bell so you don't miss new episodes. So if you enjoy the content here and you're not sure, take a peek to see if you're subscribed. Take care of yourselves and each other.